Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. It's a good day. It's only 102 in Tucson and Joe Biden is leading in the polls. So that makes me feel good. We have our speaker today who is Brian Radford. Brian is running for candidate for the Board of Supervisors in District 1. Brian, how's it going?
Pretty good. Good morning.
All right. And so with that, let me introduce Brian. Brian is a dad and foster parent. He's been a Tucson resident for nearly 20 years. He's a retired corrections law enforcement officer, and he's a graduate of Kent State University and a graduate of Cuyahoga Falls High School. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did really good.
Brian supports a number of issues that are of interest to Democratic voters, and that includes affordable health care, public education, public safety. He supports clean air and water. He supports equal opportunity. He's in favor of living wages and preserving Social Security and Medicare. He also supports paid family leave and the right to make personal choices privately. And with that, Brian, take it away.
Okay, well, I'm Brian Radford, and like Larry said, I'm running for District 1 County Supervisor. The reason I'm running is I wanted to give a voice for my neighbors in my community. I live in an unincorporated area of the county, which District 1 has a lot of areas that are unincorporated. We also include part of Marana, Oro Valley, of course, Catalina, and part of the foothills. But there's a large portion of that we just default to county. We're not in any type of municipality. So to kind of give a voice for those that don't feel like they're being represented well in government. And like I said, my neighbors, this is my first time running. I'm a first time candidate. So I by no means have, shall we say, the baggage. But in doing that, my view is for some change. I would like to see change in the way we do business. And I think we could be more efficient at it. Everybody kind of, regardless of political affiliation, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, most people can agree that government kind of gets out of hand sometime with spending. And we understand that. So there's things that we need to look at and do things differently. So that's part of the reason I'm running. The other part is I am a foster parent. I'm a foster dad. And I have 4 boys, and they are all from the foster care system. Arizona has over 19,000 children in the foster care system waiting for adoptions and waiting for permanency. And I kind of took it as a calling to be blessed to be one of those people to bring them into my house. So I've been doing that for several years. I'm certified and licensed to do that. And I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of been my second calling after retiring out of the state system. I worked several years for the state of Arizona, which was the Department of Corrections. And there I was an officer. I became a case manager and a counselor. I did mental health counseling. I also was able to work my way up. My highest level was associate deputy warden. So I've been in those meetings. I've been in planning meetings with budgets and departmental issues, policy issues. So all of that is second nature to me. You know, I can lead a meeting. I can run those talking points, look at budgets, and be able to allocate things where they need to be and prioritize. I did that at the state level. So in doing this, I would just be transferring those skills to the county level. In addition to that, I have several years of experience where I worked in manufacturing and different skill sets to include the steel industry, the plastics industry, rubber industry when I lived in Ohio, various things, kind of a lot of odd things that I've done in my past. And that all stays with us. So I have a appreciation for those people that are out here working their hardest to earn as much money to support their families. So I'm a big supporter of working families and being able to make it easier for them. If there's anything that we can do at the elected level to help in regards to childcare issues that come up, wages, being able to be fair at what we're doing, you know. yes, we're exploiting labor. There's labor to be exploited for an end to make profit. But in that, are we being compassionate? Are we being kind? Are we being fair, equal, or equitable in what we're doing? So those are all some things that are very important to me. And I think coming into this, I have a genuine desire to be helpful to that end. So in that, the current situation we're in now, when we look at the challenges that are facing the county because of the climate that we're in with the coronavirus or COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, there's going to be some budget shortfalls. And we all know that. There's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made with the budget. And allocating those things to where we feel it would make the greatest impact. Whereas at the same time, we have to be cognizant or aware that whatever decisions we make are affecting our voters or our neighbors. So, and I'm very much of the work that, what affects others also affects me. So it's not just for me, it's for everybody, it's for the neighbors and the community as a whole. And even though a lot of people are kind of painting a gloomy picture of this, I think it gives us a fresh chance to kind of look at things harder that we didn't really look at before. It's made a lot of things more aware. The status of our medical systems, the strain that it's putting on the current system, the way we have it set up now, it's going to be very challenging to come up with new ideas. How can we do this better in the future? What is our plan for the next time that something like this occurs? What can we do differently to do this better so that it doesn't last as long as it's been lasting? The current administration is kind of dragging this out because of the lack to act quickly enough and swiftly enough at the beginning to get a head start on this thing. So I think it's upon all of us at the elected level to be able to look at things a little bit differently, look deeper into our budgets, and prioritize in a compassionate way what are really the needs of our community. Are we serving the needs of our constituents? This is a service position. We are there to serve the people. The people bring us into office. We are supposed to be serving the people, not our own self-interest, not the interest of some big corporate donors. Our voters. Those are the most important, is the people. And I think with that, it includes public education. Public education and the ability to go to school and be able to have access to go to school. In a free and public society, that's paramount. That's the foundation. Without education, you don't really have the preparedness for the job market. You're building leaders through education and through different programs, whether it be vocational programs, public education from K through 12, early childhood education, community colleges. We should be having our community colleges, they should be doing a great outreach for people that want to get that education, but really don't know about how going about doing it. It's overwhelming to say, okay, yeah, I want to go to college, but Lord, it's going to cost me $20,000, $30,000 a year to go to college. That's ridiculous. We should make it more readily available, increase funding, give grants, things that we can do to help people do this better. And along with that, with the public education, looking at the operations and things that are coming up. With the coronavirus, with this pandemic that's going around, a lot of the schools are opting to online learning at the beginning. I know my children are going to be doing online learning. They were doing that at the beginning of the spring when this all shut down. So I'm fine with that. And there's some pros and cons. There's always a debate to be had, having the children physically at school, having them at home. I'm one of those that I'm kind of an optimist. I see the glass as half full. So I look at it as an opportunity for them to learn more because it's more intensified. You've removed a lot of the distractions. I have children here that have attention deficit. My one son has autism. So there's some things that are positive that I'm helping them with, and the online learning is actually a good thing for some of them as far as focus. And then there's other things that I'm concerned with about infrastructure. road maintenance. We live in Arizona, we have abundant sunshine. We should be leading the effort in solar energy, solar collection, wind energy, any type of renewable energy that helps us become more efficient at our utility usage. Our utility grid is one of the oldest, and I would like to see better ways, more efficient ways of doing that. And I'm not talking about raising a bunch of taxes to do that. It's just look at our budget we have, look at ways where we could be more creative to be able to achieve things more efficiently. Road maintenance, everybody, when I was going around, before everything shut down, I was going door to door doing the old school canvassing and talking to people. And the greatest thing on their mind, hey, how do I get my street paved? What are they going to do about these roads? What are they going to be about the holes out in front of my house? You know, simple things that we should be taking care of have been overlooked. That's why we need change. The leaders we've had, it's been years. I know my own neighborhood, it took them 20, 25 years to come by and pave our street finally, you know, and that's after a lot of going back and forth. So there's some personal experiences I've had. There's some things that I see. I'm talking to a lot of people, trying to bring them into the loop. I think we need more community involvement in elections and in politicking. So, and lastly with that is the economic growth and development, things that we can do for our smaller businesses. I think everybody knows that we should be buying local and shopping local. Tucson's one of those great locations that we do that every day. We kind of, a lot of us hold 4th Avenue near and dear to our hearts. You know, we have street fairs, we have community things that we can do as a community so that we're benefiting each other in what we do and not some far off corporation. I think we should be doing more of that. I would like to see small business incubators. If there's any type of county buildings or any buildings not being utilized, I would love to see us set up like incubators for small businesses to get a start, be able to get their foot in the door and get off the ground and launch some companies. There's a lot of employment to be had with those small businesses, and we should support them. And there's some things that I would suggest and I would like to look at. And that's why, again, I'm saying change. Change is needed. A lot of our leaders have been in these positions for 20, 25 years. And I'm looking at my first time, you know, my first time candidate, first time running. I have all kinds of nice, you know, brilliant ideas, but I need to get an office. So I'm trying my best and I'm looking for people's support. And at this point, I would welcome any questions, any concerns. Again, I would like this to be a dialogue, like Larry said. So any questions, please put them forward. And I hope to get some votes for August. August 4th is our primary. So our early ballots are already out there.
All right, thank you very much. We have a question from Carolyn Klassen, and she would like to know, what distinguishes you from your Democratic opponents in the primary, Rex Scott? Why are you more qualified for this job?
Okay, like I said, I spent many years in state service. So my position with the state government, I worked for the state of Arizona, where we were driven by policies and procedures, and everything is driven by Arizona revised statutes. So in doing that, a lot of the budgetary and policy driven issues I've already done at the state level. It's simply transmitting those skills from the state level down to the county level. And in doing that, also at the county level, when you're dealing with the Board of Supervisors, you have to be able to collaborate with different people. We have to be able to collaborate with different governments. In District 1, like I said, we have the unincorporated parts of Pima County, but we also have the municipalities of Marana and Oro Valley. And so we need to be working together, not against each other, in things that are of common good to the community. So I think I have a good handle on how to do that. And I think that my many years in state government is a good position that prepared me for this. So yeah, I think I am a very good candidate for that.
So Steve and Christina would like to know, did the supervisors go far enough with the reopening criteria? In other words, should we be having fines for people who don't wear masks? Maybe change the percentage of cases below for reopening?
I think at the county level, as far as the Pima County Board of Supervisors, mandating the mask, that's kind of a given. That should actually be coming from the state, if not the federal level. At this point, when we're seeing states like Florida, Texas, and Arizona and California, the rising cases would necessitate that there should be a federal mandate nationwide. You're going to get a lot of pushback from people. I know a lot of people are politicizing the issue of face masks. It's just common sense. It's protecting ourselves, protecting our neighbors, and everybody that we're around. So it's kind of like, you know, you can give the seatbelt argument. Hey, are you going to wear your seatbelt in your car? Or the helmet argument. The mask is pretty much, it's a medical issue that everybody should be doing it. How do you enforce it? We don't really have police manpower to say, hey, you know, if you don't wear, I'm going to give you a ticket, that type of thing. Some states are doing that. It's kind of a mishmash of the way of enforcement. But as far as Pima County, I think most of the people I've seen are complying with it because they know it is the law in Pima County, must have a face covering. I myself am doing that. I think it's upon all of us to kind of insist that people do it for our own safety. It's a personal safety issue. It's not really a political issue. I know a lot of people are giving it that spin, and it's a shame that people are doing that they're politicizing it. But I think for our own public safety, we should do that because it minimizes our exposure. And until there's a vaccine or further treatments or something good comes out of all this, I think we need to do that in the near future.
We have a question from Tony. Tony would like to know, are you willing to ban gun shows at the fairgrounds? That's Pima County property. I know something about this issue as well. People can go to the fairgrounds when there's a gun show and
Right.
just buy a gun. There's no record. It's all cash, and you can buy any kind of gun you want.
No, I don't support having gun shows at the fairgrounds. The gun show loophole has been there for many years. I would like to dissuade that gun show from even being on county property, on public property. But be that as it may, I think that if they would do background checks and if they would do the proper registration procedures that are done in other places, because I think it sends the wrong message. You shouldn't be able to just walk in and have anybody purchase it without any documentation, without any background. That's kind of foolish. So the gun show loophole needs to go away, and any type of enforcement that the Board of Supervisors can do, because it is county property, to kind of dissuade it or have it at a different location, but insist that any guns sold in the county have to be background check, registration, all the proper procedures for gun ownership.
Barbara Warren would like to know, what do you think that we need to do to address issues with policing in our country? You see videos of the cops
Right.
stopping people who are just walking down the street, and they end up dead. What can you do about that as a county supervisor who's in charge of the sheriff's office?
I think that comes down to more accountability. There's a code of ethics. Any officer, having retired out of law enforcement, there's a code of ethics that we take, that we have to abide by certain policies and procedures. And when you go out of those policies and procedures, you put yourself and your fellow officers and the public at risk. So I think it's an accountability issue. I don't support defunding the police department. I think that we shouldn't militarize the police department. Military equipment going into the hands of the police departments is it's not good to do that. I think if anything, what we need to do is have law enforcement work closer with social services. A lot of these calls may be substance abuse. A lot of the issues, domestic issues, are either substance or alcohol abuse. There's some counseling that could be done, and if there is police involvement, there needs to be a review process. I highly support citizen review of these departments. There has to be more transparency in what's going on with the investigations as far as accusations that people were working outside of the box or going rogue in the department. There needs to be accountability. People need to be held accountable when errors happen. But we also need to be prepared to prevent that at the beginning, whether it be through training or any type of anything that we can promote to make sure that these things don't continue happening. Because it is an issue. And again, I would support more accountability. I don't support defunding the department by any means, but I think we could do better at working together with the community and with social services for those times when maybe mental health intervention, any type of critical incident response team can come in there and diffuse the situation rather than escalating it. And I think that's what we've been doing. We're escalating situations when we can go in and de-escalate and bring everybody down so that we don't end up in those situations.
So specifically to the sheriff's department, would you, I've never seen a sheriff's officer with a body cam. What specific changes would you make for the county deputies?
I encourage the use of body cams. I encourage the transparency between the officers and the public. I think that needs to be there. A lot of the things with the sheriff's department is we have those that take, how should I put this? I don't want to put it the wrong way. Taking the badge to heart, the superhero complex. We all know that. Having come out of law enforcement, there's those people that want to be overly aggressive and work outside of policy, and you can't do that. You just can't go rogue. You have to stay within the policies and procedures that are presented by the department. The laws of the state, the Constitution, there's limits where you have to work within those limits. And inside of that, we have what's called the use of force continuum. The use of force continuum tells you, is my response appropriate for the situation am I in? Have I used jeopardy, opportunity, and preclusion? Have I used tools to know, hey, am I overreacting in this situation? And a lot of it, these are split-second decisions that have to be made. And like I said, it goes back to accountability for myself as an officer and for the department as a whole, so that we are presented in the best light to the community. We don't want to be the enemy of the community. We are there to serve and protect the community. So again, that service-mindedness needs to come back. And again, through change, I think we'll get there, and I'm very positive that we can do that as Board of Supervisors members and in working with the sheriff and all of that, the Pima County government.
All right. Steve wants to ask a question live. Steve, I've made it so that you can speak. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question to Brian? Make sure you turned off the mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I live in District 1, and I feel that in the last couple of years, I've been represented by a sociopath, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, in the practical side of things, if you get past the primary and you are the nominee, what are you going to do against the pretty much overwhelming Republican registration that District 1 has, especially in light of whatever type of campaign season we're going to have? It's
Right.
not going to be a normal one.
Right.
How is a Democrat going to win? It's really what I'm going to say.
Right. And in all honesty, I've kind of already begun that process. Because before we were shut down, I was practically knocking on every door that I could knock on. I was doing this in a way that most people were like, you got to be careful knocking on some of those doors because they're not all Democrats. And I'm like, well, they're all members of the community. And that's how I look at it. Regardless of party affiliation, at the end of the day, we're all members of the community, and we have to be able to work together. So to that end, what I've been doing is having purposeful, level-headed discussions, not highly debates. You know, some people will debate an issue to its end, and that's when we know, you know, say, have a nice day, you know, good luck, you know, see you later, that type of thing. But to be able to have those conversations and make them meaningful and purposeful, stick to the issues, talk about, we have more things in common than we do in different. So in doing that, I've already talked to a lot of them that are registered Republicans that are going to vote for me, strictly because I'm more level-headed. I am a pretty calm person. Having worked in the Department of Corrections for many, many years, I've worked with people of different temperaments, different diverse backgrounds, different mental health states. I've spent a good probably 9 years of my career working at the max custody level. Those are the worst of the worst. I spent about 4 years working in our detention department, which was the guys that were still acting bad even after they were incarcerated. So I've met some pretty good challenges, and I've been able to, I'm good at persuading. Not that I can sell ice to Eskimos, but I'm pretty good at being level-headed, being a reasonable person that just, you know, it's the way we present ourselves. And unfortunately, for the last few years, like you said, the perception or the way that somebody presents themselves is very important. You know, people aren't going to remember what you say or do, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. So for gosh sakes, I try to make people feel comfortable so that they can participate in the process, because it is very challenging. And I think I've met that challenge pretty well at being able to talk to those people, convince them, you know, hey, you know, this is what I'm bringing to the table. You know, I'm a voice of change, a voice of reason. I would like to see us navigate this safely for everybody. And so far it's been working, and I would probably continue along that path of unifying more than dividing. I think when we divide, we make it bad for everybody. So by unifying and bringing them in, you know, we have a lot of registered independent voters. We have a lot of registered Republicans in District 1. However, that gap is shrinking. The gap's down to maybe 3,000 or so between the two parties. But aside from that, it's being able to convince others that, hey, this is in all of our best interest. We have to work together. So I think I'm doing a good job at doing that, and I will continue in that framework of talking to everybody.
All right. We have a question from Lillian, and she says that TUSD has some schools that were closed, and you know, they might need some work, you know, but neighborhoods would love to see them being used. Would you be interested in opening up some of these unused schools for business incubators?
Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly. That's what I was talking about. When I was growing up in Ohio, I saw a lot of the schools that were being closed down and vacated, and then you just have this large vacant building. And it's the same here in Arizona. I'm of a generation, let's see, I'm from Generation X. You know, I hate to put labels on this, but this is how I'm going to try to get this. As the baby boomer generation and Generation X and our generations kind of move forward, there's less children. People, the younger generation or millennials aren't starting families for various reasons. So there's less children to occupy these schools. So yes, we have a lot of structures that are being underutilized and aren't being used. I hate seeing buildings just sit vacant when they could be put to use. So if elected to the Board of Supervisors, I would look at ways that the county, if it's a county property or a school district property, that we can work to try to find better ways of doing this. You know, working with the Tucson Chamber or the Small Business Administration, try to get some small companies to occupy the space and do just that. They call it an incubator. If you take these companies when they're small and offer them a safe space to do business, and a lot of them, they would just jumpstart and start growing, and then all of a sudden you have these new businesses, and as they grow, they're going to add more employees, and it's better for everybody rather than just seeing the buildings just sit there idle. So we can certainly do that, and I would love to do that. You know, that's one of my goals.
Is there any way to make Wi-Fi more available in rural and low-income neighborhoods? It's a real problem for remote instruction. So what can the county specifically do to make Wi-Fi more available?
Well, the use of technology, as we move to these online learning processes, I know in my own local school district, what they were doing is trying to distribute laptops and Chromebooks to families that didn't have the technology. And at the same time, if we can create hotspots, which broadcast the Wi-Fi signal, but also our use of the public libraries. Our public library systems, I know a lot of people, when they think of the public library, they just think of books. Well, our public libraries are basically information centers, and there's a lot of technology and computer technology that could be used there. And we can certainly broadcast Wi-Fi at those locations of the public library. And in rural areas where that's not a possibility, I would look at any type of hotspot devices or any type of rebate or assistance that the county could give where people can actually get that service, so that we don't want the whole thing of being equal and equitable. We want this to work for everybody. So our rural communities have to be represented and be able to get this technology.
Susie Anderson has a question concerning how to deal with the homeless, domestic violence, and drug issues. And her question is, she says, welcome, Brian. Welcome with your background in corrections and mental health issues. Would you try to change policing in Pima County to deal with homeless people, domestic issues, and drug issues? And she also asks, do you know about the British system where mental health teams associated with the police answer calls for domestic and drug issues?
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of municipalities where they're trying to pair up social workers to work alongside the police force. And on the flip side, there's some agencies that are trying to give training to the police officers so that they themselves could be those critical incident responders or crisis negotiators. However you want to look at it, in dealing with the homeless population and things like that, certainly I think there's ways that we could be doing things better. A lot of the people that are jailed or incarcerated, the majority of it is substance issues. There's things that we could be doing, whether it's substance abuse, alcohol, or mental health issues. So we have to be better at collaborating with the social service agencies. There's a lot of agencies in Pima County that need further funding and needing assistance to be able to do this. So we're basically reallocating from the sheriff's department for these social services to be able to collaborate in a better way. It's still public safety. You know, a lot of people, when they think of public safety, they think of policing. Well, when I think of public safety, I'm also thinking of social services, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, homelessness shelters, transitional housing. There's all kinds of things. Our one-stop workforce connections, there's training programs. We have to be able to, you know, instead of handing the man a fish, teach him how to fish. Let's train people. People have to be rewired to get out of these situations. A lot of people, they end up in these holes and they're like, well, how do I get myself out of it? You know, who do I go to? Who do I turn to? And I think we need to work better with agencies to be able to do that so that they don't end up in the system. Because once incarcerated, you know, they go from the county jail to the state system and then they just come in and out, in and out. I had several guys that have been in the system 5-6 times. And each time they come up, I'm sitting there doing the guy's release planning. And I'm like, hey, you know, why do you keep coming back? You know, and it's that instability of not being able to get on your feet, the lack of support. A lot of them, they lack local family. They might be here for whatever reason, and they don't have local resources available. We need to look at creative ways of giving them those resources. Let's get them off the street. Let's help them out. You know, you have to support people. And it's better to, you know, provide them with affordable housing, provide them with a job opportunity. a lot of them, they want to do good, they just don't know how. And that's where we have to build those bridges with the community.
We've got a question from Sandy. She asks about the transportation system that the county runs. What can the Board of Supervisors do to improve transportation services for the elderly and for disabled people?
Well, when we talk about the public transportation, whether we're talking SunTran, the Rapid Train, any of that stuff, the Sun Shuttle, you know, there's different things. I would like to see expanded programs. I know that where I'm at, there's limited access up here because I'm all the way up in Catalina. So a lot of those services, we have to make sure that we are meeting our elderly community or those that are mobility challenged that need assistance with that. And I would like to see more public transportation. There's less cars on the road, less congestion. I'm all for that. You know, we have to have creative ways. Not that I just want to go out here and spend a whole bunch of money, but at the same time, are we getting the greatest bang for our buck from these services? You know, there's services that are in place right now. Are we being the most efficient? Are we providing the level of service that those with mobility issues or the elderly seniors, you know, what are their needs? Are their needs being met? And if they're not, then shame on us. We should be doing better at that. And I would certainly support any efforts to improve and expand public transportation.
We have a question from Carolyn. She would like to know, as a former corrections officer, what are you hearing about the situation with COVID-19 in Arizona's prisoners, in Arizona's prisons? And she means conditions for both prisoners and staff.
I don't know specifics, but I do know that precautions are put in place. They're doing their best to try to minimize it as much as possible. And they're pretty much following the CDC guidelines, like they're recommending all the communities to follow as far as isolating those, putting them into quarantine, keeping them away from the regular population. But anything that we put in place, issues with sanitation, washing your hands, again, it's public education. A lot of these individuals that are in group home settings, whether it's the prison system or senior care facilities, when you talk about group situations or congregate care centers, there's a high need for sanitation and cleanliness, for personal protection, PPE for staff, and also I know they've issued face masks, and they've also issued face masks to the population, I believe. But again, I don't have the specifics, but I think we're doing better than most states with the institutionalized population. But again, I don't have specifics, but I do know that they're working on sanitation, PPE, being safe, using isolation and quarantine as needed. And eventually those type of precautions will help them get through this safely.
Jean has a question. She would like to know, she would like your view on the fact that there's one zip code in the county that has the most COVID-19 deaths. And yes, it's the Sapphire of Tucson Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. How do you think the county can do healthcare quality better?
With the county, I think it's an issue of oversight of the cleanliness standards and the sanitation standards. You know, there's things that we should be doing. Any standards that apply to our hospitals should certainly apply to the senior care facilities. And I know that they're saying it was concentrated at that one location, but I know most of the facilities, they're struggling with that. Because when you talk about infection control, sanitation, and things like that, certainly the county could have a voice in that. We have our own public health department as far as inspections and different types of review and audit procedures to make sure that they're following the guidelines. Certainly a lot of them are private organizations, or whether they're public or charitable organizations, but regardless, they should all be following the CDC guidelines. And we need to make sure that they are in fact doing that. And I think it's, with that location, it was a learning curve. My understanding that they were kind of caught off guard at the beginning of all of this, but even without this pandemic, those type of facilities should be following the proper infection control, sanitation, and the things that we need to ensure that all those patients and residents are being safe and being taken care of in the proper way. So certainly the county does have a role, and I would like to see it as working alongside the Pima Health Department to ensure that the proper audit procedures and inspections and things of that nature. And I think we can get ahead of this.
Got a question from Sherry. She would like to know what Pima County can do for people who are renting their apartments and they're unemployed and facing eviction. What can the county do for them?
We can certainly, working alongside our constables, we have ways of, when it comes to eviction court or eviction notices, there's things that the county can do to help kind of persuade different property owners that, hey, you know, people are going through a crunch right now as far as the financial crunch. So if there's anything that we can do to help mitigate those losses, as far as giving extensions on cases where, you know, if the eviction's been served, you know, how long do I have? Can I have a longer period of time to try to pay or try to find other employment? You know, kind of a forbearance period, but there certainly should be, you know, and it's going to vary because a lot of these are owned by private investment firms or what have you. But certainly the county does have a role, and we can kind of try to do things that we can that are in our control to help mitigate so that people can stay in their homes and have a roof over their head without having the fear of eviction or being put out.
Let's see here. Are you aware of the Tucson 2030 district that aims to reduce energy, water, and transportation emissions by 50% by 2030? The county is a member of the district, and would you support these efforts? And if so, how would you do that?
Well, there's certainly ways that the county, we have our own fleet vehicles. There's fleet services that the county utilizes to make sure that those vehicles are the most fuel efficient that we have, and any type of county property to make sure we're utilizing clean energy and being the most efficient at our energy use. But again, I think things like that, you know, the Green New Deal, things that make us more efficient and more less pollution. I'm all for clean air and clean water, and I think that it's a good goal to have. And certainly as a county, there's things that we could do, there's steps that we can take to make sure that we meet that goal by 2030, if not beforehand. You know, there's all kinds of things that we can look at. They recently got approval, I think it was up in Pinal County, there's an electric truck factory that's going into Pinal County, up around Coolidge, and things like hybrid vehicles, electric usage, things that are renewable resources so that we're not causing as much pollution and being clean as much as possible with our clean air and our clean water.
We've got a question from Susie. She would like to know, with the quarantine in place, how can children go out to get internet service? You know, they have to go to libraries, mobile hotspots, and fast food places to get an internet connection. And tell us about that, and which wireless companies might be more generous in spreading wireless farther into our communities.
Right. Well, certainly with the use of technology, like I said earlier, the online learning and the use of technology, each school district is kind of coming at this in a different way. I know our local district is offering to utilize laptops for children that don't have access. When it comes to the Wi-Fi, there's some hotspot devices that actually generate a Wi-Fi signal. So if we can get more of those readily available, whether it's through a county effort where the county could be able to procure something that could be given out to the school systems, and then from there be farmed out to the community, to the families. But yeah, the public libraries have access. Different public county buildings or facilities probably have that same access, but to be able to give it to rural areas or to people that don't have the ability to go to a library, we need to look at, like I said, there's devices that you can have that actually generate a hotspot for Wi-Fi signals. And if there's a procurement process where we could look at maybe getting some of those and utilizing them through our different school districts so we can get them out to families, I would support that highly. I'm all for the use of technology, and I think it would be a good thing.
All right. People on the call, I highly encourage you to ask your questions in the Q&A or raise your little blue hand. We've got about 10 minutes left in our program today. Brian, here's a question for you. So you mentioned that the Pima County colleges should reach out and get more students, and you mentioned increasing funding grants. Give us some examples of how you think the county colleges or the Pima College, should reach out.
I think there should be more. It is a community college, and unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't really take advantage of the fact that we have such a great community college in our neighborhood. But I think we could be doing greater outreach with people who maybe want to learn new job skills. I certainly went through different rigmarole of different job skills that I had, and to be able to do that workforce training, people that have been laid off or left from one position could certainly have a need to learn new skills. So anything that the colleges can offer as far as almost like a workforce development, things that we're doing with the county one-stops, we can do at the community college level, where people can learn new skills, new certifications, new things that they can use to kind of lift themselves up a little bit. We talk about people pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. Well, if we don't provide them the tools to do that, shame on us. These are community colleges. These colleges are owned by us. We're taxpayers. The community owns them. So they should be utilizing their efforts. If, as an elected official, if I can help the university kind of promote, if they have these programs available, I would certainly do that. I'm a big advocate for learning. I'm a lifelong learner myself. I'm constantly learning new things. And I think that's just, it's nature for everybody to just learn as much as we can. But when it comes to retraining for new jobs or new opportunities, when we talk about renewable energy, wind sources, solar panels, things like that, there's technology that people may not be familiar with, but if they could take classes and things at the college, at the community college, to learn these skills, learn these trades, be able to do this, it lifts everybody. It brings up the community if we're able to help each other out. We should be lifting each other, not tearing each other down. And I'm a big advocate of education at all levels. And I think our community colleges are kind of underutilized right now. And any effort that I can make to help bring people in, I would greatly do that. That's something that I stand for.
Lillian has another interesting question. She mentions that many road intersections in Pima County have either county or city private Wi-Fi. So this is about getting access to the internet. Would you support the county offering public Wi-Fi to more of the county's buildings and intersections?
Right. Well, certainly. It's probably a security issue. Some of those systems are public safety systems. But again, to be able to give public access, I surely support that. I think that's one of the goals of the 5G system that's coming out. But just like some of us that grew up when FM radio came about, or we moved from AM to FM, not to date everybody, but I think at this point in technology, Wi-Fi should be kind of broadcast so that everybody could have access to some point. There's cybersecurity issues, I'm sure, but if we can safely do that for the public, that would be great, because the use of technology has kind of come to a point where an information society, and the more that we know that we are so reliant on this, it needs to be elevated to a point that everybody has access. So I think we certainly can look at stuff like that. Again, there's some cybersecurity issues with safety and ingress into other networks, but if we can make it secure where we could have public access, I would support it, yes.
We have a question about JTED, the vocational training offering. How would you support that? How would you expand it? If you're a Pima County supervisor, what would you do to promote it?
I would certainly promote it and expand it. Like I said, I'm a big advocate for education in all forms, including vocational and technology education. I know some of the programs, JTED is in some of our high schools. And again, I would like to see more of those programs. I know that when I was in school, I kind of benefited from some of those type of programs. And I would certainly like to see us support that. Not every student has the ability to go to college or to a university. But aside from that, we're not just talking our young generation, we're talking about retraining the workforce. So as things occur and as people go through the ups and downs of life, you know, the need for retraining, learning new technologies, being able to learn skills that are necessary for the future, that I wholeheartedly support that. I would like to see those programs expanded. I would like to see more offerings, you know, different things that they can offer. And of course the funding, and I'm all in favor for that. You know, we're all lifelong learners.
All right, we've answered all the questions that were posed, and wondered if you could take us to the end of the program today, Brian, by talking about how people can support your campaign and where they can donate money.
Okay. Well, certainly I do ask for everybody's support. Again, as a first-time candidate, I'm kind of trying to do this my best that I can. And you can visit us at brianradford.org, brianradford.org, or you can look for me on Facebook or Twitter. I have both. We're on social media. And again, I look at it from the standpoint that I am a member of the community. I'm one of your neighbors. I am by no means a politician. This is my first time running. I think there's a need for change. I'm very optimistic about the future. I know that right now everybody kind of feels down and there's a lot of pressure about the virus going on and the things that are happening in our community. But at the same time, I think there's a wealth of opportunities that are going to be presented to us to do things better. We need to build better. And in doing that, I would like to be able to be that person, to be able to be that voice on the board to say, hey, you know, county can be supporting this in this way. As a county, we need to support these efforts, whether it be through education, fair wages, all of that stuff. You know, we're all in this together and we can all get through this together. We need to learn to work together better. We need to use our social service agencies. There's a lot of things that we're doing, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of resources that we're underutilizing. So I would like to see more change. And I think it would be a positive change for us to get through this, but not only that, to launch ourselves into the future. Pima County has a lot of good things going for it. I love living where I'm at, and I would love to be your voice on the Pima County Board of Supervisors.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. We appreciate you coming and speaking at today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. And with that, I'm going to end the meeting. I want to thank you for appearing here and wish you the best of luck in your campaign.
All right, thank you. All right, take care.
Bye-bye.